Let's go ahead and bring Jennifer Johnson to the stage.
So today, I'm gonna need a chair. I'm a mom, I need to rest. It's been busy, y'all. So I may get up. All right, so this is Saturday, but I'm gonna take y'all to church, okay? Why should I feel discouraged? And why should the shadows come? And why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, a constant friend is He. His eyes is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. And I sing because I'm happy, and I sing because I'm free. Yes, I'm free. His eyes is on the sparrow, and I know y'all are watching, taking care of me. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so, yes. So yeah, I grew up in the church, and it's rough. Performing, kind of like putting on this mask, trying to kind of walk the straight and narrow, trying to kind of like continue to be a mom, continue to be an activist, and you lose pieces of yourself along the way. So singing is like not something that I do often. So it's cool to be able to kind of share like something that's very personal to me, and I'm finding my way back to that aspect of, you know, artistry and creativity, and it's gonna show up when you see some of my work. Not as much as I would like, but you'll get a chance to kind of, you know, rub your eyes a little bit when I talk a little bit about my son and about what I do at Bowie State University. So I'm multidisciplinary artist and designer. I'm a mom, I'm an activist, I'm an art educator, and it's so dope to be here with you guys. I'm so excited. Where's my clicker? Yes, alrighty. So Teresa, yo, that was dope as F. So we're basically like the same person. So it's like, I'm really excited. At first I was like, man, why do I even need to get up on stage? Because we align, and so it's just really great and amplifying, and I'm trying not to get emotional to see like another Black designer as an educator and as a fighter for the effing community. Like, y'all don't really see us, and we just get a lot of pushback for bringing our passions and our activism into the classroom. And people tell us from the day that we're born, no, you can't talk about this. There's no place for this in the curriculum and the pedagogy, but it's our job to say, well, there is. And this is how, you know, we can kind of give y'all like your little Eurocentric shit and stuff, but it's just like, we have a lot to be able to contribute and a lot to say. So it's just so refreshing to be able to see that amplified, and you know, keep it up. We're gonna talk, we're gonna collab, because this is just the beginning. And so thank you for opening up the doors to educators, especially Black female educators, to continue to tell our stories, because as you see, there's no limit to what we can do and trust me, like, we're securing the future of Black folk, white folk, everybody. Like, that's our job, and we take it very, very seriously. So, all right, okay, long slide. All right, so, segue from my little spiel, like, I'm Black and Puerto Rican, I got hips, I'm loud, I use my hands, and so it's just, I don't really see that graphic designer out there. I know that we're here, but we often don't get a chance to get a lot of that visibility. So I'm gonna start off with the student stuff so I can kind of get that out of the way, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about like my own personal practice. So some of the stuff that informs what I do, bell hooks, teaching to transgress. So I really look to the ancestors, to the women who have really paved the way to give me, to like inform like my role as an educator, so she means a lot to me. Art activism, it's a workbook by Aaron Mabum, who is a former NFL player. I don't know if you've heard about him, but he works closely with he works with elementary school kids. He's like legit an amazing person. He's like a saint in Baltimore, and he's been able to really, like transform the lives of young kids, and not just necessarily use like his work as an activist to say, hey, like this is what I do when I'm a teacher, but this workbook, you guys should really pick it up because it really talks a little bit about like identity, and it has a whole bunch of students like answer questions about like, what kind of person they want to be, what kind of artist they want to be. So Adrienne Maree Brown, I'm sure you guys are familiar with her. Designing and shaping the futures which we want to live in. That is our job as educators, as designers. Nobody is going to do it for us. You guys see that every day. So it's really up to us to be able to kind of like, take up the mantle. So I'm really about remixing, about re-examination. Like, shout out to all the folks who were in my workshop earlier. We went on a photo walk, and we just kind of walked around Chicago and like had a blast, remixing images, put them all in a grid. You guys will see them in our stories and stuff later on. So I'm really just about emphasizing student voices, allowing them to kind of like re-examine, their existence, because, it's shifting and changing, and that's what I really love about young black folks, about, the folks that I'm with every single day. It's a lot. So just a little bit of visual background. So I used to teach in Baltimore City. So there's a very thriving community of educators and about people that are really putting in the work. And so this is a little bit of stuff that I did in grad school. I went to MICA. I was one of the only like 2 black people like in my program, and I got a lot of flack for bringing in the blackness like into my projects, and I got a lot of questions about like, well, why this, why that? We want you to focus on this aspect, or why don't you repackage this design to look this way? It was I really had, and that experience really taught me about how I'm gonna do what I want, and I'm gonna say what I want, and I'm a grad student in Baltimore, so my thesis is going to be about Baltimore. It's gonna be about the community, not necessarily about what you think that I should be focusing on. So. While I was in grad school, I was teaching in Baltimore City. That was my first exposure to like really being in the classroom. So here you see me working with kids, talking about digital art, talking about the love for typography and understanding language and systems. And then here you see Baltimore City young high school students who were getting ready to go on a trip to Africa. And I was like, I really want to have that conversation with you guys about how you feel about diaspora. Like, are you an African even though you were born here in the States? So it was really a blast. Like, my work is really about faces and about portraiture and about identity and re-examining what that means. And so this is a little bit of like the fun stuff that I do. I do a lot of freelance imagery, and so I really just love like telling narratives. And DC is so diverse and the population is diverse because I'm like back and forth between Baltimore and DC. So this is just a little bit of some really beautiful captures. So this was like, Grammy-nominated album artwork for Imogene Heap that I did a few years ago. It's a really fun experience, yeah. So I wanted to highlight that real quick. Now I'm just gonna get into like some teacher stuff. So again, it's really important that you understand that we are very institutionalized. You cannot deny that. And so being at an HBCU, the curriculum does not change. It is still very Eurocentric and it is still very institutionalized. And these black folk are thinking, okay, well, this is how I need to learn design and this is how you're supposed to teach it to me, right? Like, so that I can go out and make money. But they don't realize that, well, you're here, and so that means it can shift and it can change, and you can actually help me write the curriculum. You can actually help me write the pedagogy. You can actually decide what are some of the artists that you want to learn about that don't have enough visibility. So I have them do like fun stuff where they cook up the Gladys Knight sweet potato pie, put all the ingredients out, to spell words, to spell stuff like culture, to kind of like understand like playing with type and how fun it can be. Because, you know, I really just want to be able to just infuse, you know, the beauty of what they can create. And so, and I teach freshmen all the way to seniors. And so, again, playing with language, playing with, you know, understanding how they can flip the script on language that really objectifies who they are. We talk a lot about like releasing identity and releasing like what those expectations that people hold with, you know, HBCU students. So my complexion isn't an exception. These are just freshmen. It's just like literally like, hey, like exposing them to understanding how they can use language to just completely deconstruct the system. Again, you know, bringing in Emory Douglas, showing students how they need to honor like their elders, their ancestors who really paved the way. This was a really great moment, bringing Emory in to just kind of sit and chat with the students and work with them. We had him come in to do a talk, partnered with AIGA DC and Diane to bring Emory to bring Emory to DC and to bring him to Bowie State. Had a fun zine workshop. So this was just like a really amazing moment for them to just sit front and center with like a design legend. So this was a really powerful moment. So yeah, so understanding that, you know, the contemporary importance of capturing, defining, and reclaiming like their heritage. It's like so important as they realize who they are as design students. So super, super, super exciting. And he's like Uncle Emory. He's like, love to talk, love to just, to be able to like chill with the students. We were like, make a zine, Emory, make a zine. And he's like, I'm just gonna sit back and talk and just like hang out and chill. So it was just so dope. So again, reclamation of visual culture by honoring the past and present. Like my role as a professor at an HBCU, I take it so seriously, and I'm constantly reminding those students, like you're walking on very sacred hollow ground, you know? And so, you know, how do you kind of take that culture and that history and preserve it so that your campus ends up becoming this really beautiful institution that kind of like holds these values and keeps them close when the direction of the country like completely falls apart, right? So this is right after 45 came into office. The students had just come off of creating these really beautiful like get out the vote posters, and some of them had them featured by AIGA, and we were all like super excited. The next day after we saw the election results, the students were like, wow, like I guess like our votes didn't matter. And I was like, oh, the F they did. The fact that you got out and voted meant something, and you can change what happens during the next election. So we knew that we had to come up with a creative response, and I wanted for them to take that agency, and I wanted for them to know, yeah, you guys got this. Because the future of this country lies within you. So they came up with the statement, our future is us. So we screen printed these posters, it was just like amazing, it was so much fun. We were by our building, and we were just out there, walking around campus, having a blast. And it was so amazing to see the students just kind of like take back the block, to kind of use their campus to like activate noise. They were actual downloadable posters, so people could like download the posters, put them on Facebook, put them wherever, and it spread for a little while, and it was just really good for the students to see that they got so much support for, just a really cool creative reaction. So again, like I'm constantly challenging them to like change the social landscape. Like you guys have the power to do that. Like I spend so much time reminding them, like grades don't matter, rubrics don't matter. Write your own, like, let's sit together, let's write your own rubric where you grade yourself and where you can actually say like, hey, like, what is it about me that's really gonna make a difference like within my work? Or am I just gonna get so caught up in the grade that I'm just really gonna lose my way? Like this is legit stuff that continues to happen with these students because they're so used to being objectified, my grade, I have to get out of school, I have to graduate, I cannot be myself, I have to conform to what society thinks that I should be as a designer. So I love senior thesis because the students, they get an opportunity to just really make something really beautiful, and I really encourage them to like, again, re-examine culture, re-examine the narrative. So what you see here is a font design where the student researched every single HBCU in the United States. I think there's like 106. Well, hopefully it will continue to be that amount because some of them are completely closing down. So it was just really important that like she took the time to kind of research what does being an HBCU student mean, who are some of my elders and my ancestors, or some like, you know, artists and folks who came out of like these really beautiful institutions that we're trying so hard to preserve. So this was like, again, a re-examination of digital imagery and of typography and merging merging HBCU folks. So you'll see like Erica Badu, Nikki Giovanni, MLK, Eric Banner, Common, like all these folks who we would never even think, you know, went to HBCUs, and giving, and you know, just highlighting them really in a really cool, dope way. So I was so proud. And again, like I have them create like photo monuments throughout the city. Again, like kind of like using their work to kind of like infuse like this really interesting like conversation about Black men and about how we view Black men, about how they see themselves. And a lot of times, you know, they're so desensitized and they're not always necessarily comfortable talking about it because they feel like, well, this is just the way things are. And it's like, but you have the power to at least have that conversation and to at least show folks like, well, this is my viewpoint. So by the way, these kids are not holding guns, they are holding cameras. And this is not them lined up, you know, in a typical way where, you know, they're about to be like just hung or, you know, whatever. So literally, they're holding cameras and the slide is gone for some reason. But the student put targets on his friends and said, you know, we're holding our cameras as our weapon of choice, but yet we're viewed as targets. So this was a really exciting project where it was the first time that we were able to cross-collaborate with a predominantly white institution for something that was pretty crazy. So a Bowie, and you may have heard about this, a BSU student who was a few months away from graduating, he was just commissioned as a second lieutenant. He was killed at the University of Maryland's campus by a white person. Horrible. It was rough. It was rough for our campus. I had like 16 students who were graduating that same semester and they were gonna share a seat with this guy, Lieutenant Richard Collins. They had his entire graduation like gown like sitting in an empty chair. It was really emotional. It was hard. I had to really put on a happy face for the students that were graduating and just keep moving forward. So we knew the following fall semester after that happened in the spring that we wanted to show how the campuses can heal. So instead of us perpetuating sadness, which is not something that we wanted for his parents to see and for the campus to continue to feel like was a result from this heaviness, we chose to design like this really beautiful mural. So it was actually featured at the State House in Annapolis, like, you know, the actual capital of Maryland, the House of Delegates. It was there for a couple of months, like while the House was in session. So you had legislators who were able to just kind of pass by the mural every day to be reminded. We shot a documentary and that was also on display too as well. I'm sad that I didn't put that in there, but so it was just amazing to kind of see like the collaborative spirit there. The University of Maryland's president is in that image too, and then also our president. So it was just really exciting. And so the students, and it was challenging because the parents were like, we really don't want to use an image of our son in this mural, but you know, we're gonna let you guys proceed, but we just want you to focus on the bigger picture of positivity and of where we want for these emotions to really fester, not in sadness and heaviness, but in hope. So again, like I have, you know, my students talk a lot about researching their person, researching what diaspora means to them, because a lot of students, they're Kenyan American or they're from all different walks of life, and they're oftentimes like the first, you know, graduate, you know, first gen graduate, you know, graduates. So it's always really beautiful to kind of see what they would infuse. So this student, she was from Kenya. She wanted to be able to highlight like Kenyan fabric that she had designed. So her whole thesis was just about like young Kenyan millennials, kind of like, you know, bringing forth these beautiful Black faces, like stuff that you just don't see a lot, you know, like in the curriculum. And so if I have a student that wants to be able to take an approach to like explore her own cultural importance and inheritance and identity, you know? I'm not gonna say no to that. That's exactly what I want for them to be infusing into like who they are. So again, like sexual assault, it's not just an issue in certain campuses, it exists. And sometimes HBCUs, you know, they have that reputation that they have to protect because we don't get funding, you know, or grants go to very specific, you know, programs. And so we have a lot of students that face a lot of issues, sexual assault especially, and it gets pushed under the rug because we know we could get shut down if stuff comes to the light. So students in their own way want to be able to kind of take their artwork and amplify those voices. If it means, well, I'm gonna do my photo series of all of my friends who have been victimized on campus and their voices have been completely shut down, then I wanna be able to highlight that. So here, the student, Milan Marshall, went around campus, interviewed like 600 students, came up with like this really cool photo zine, walked around campus with like an empty jacket and had, you know, folks like write down what they really think about, you know, females and names that they've been called. And she was really vulnerable and kind of like activating that conversation. All right. So, you know, my teaching, it's hard. You know, balancing my life as a mom and, you know, basically trying to find a really happy medium of motherhood and giving a lot of time to my students, and then realizing that I have like my own student at home who relies so much on me. And I have been told that, well, you shouldn't talk about your mothering. You shouldn't really talk about like how it can be an act of resistance. You shouldn't like leave that stuff at home. We don't really want to hear like, you know, about family life and about the artwork that you make that inspires your family. It's a little too personal. Rich, yes, personal, you know? Like I love that you were able to kind of like infuse that. It is personal, and we need to be able to kind of, you know, embrace motherhood and embrace mothering and parenting in general and families, and to understand that it can inform, you know, what we do. And there's a reason. You know, he almost died, and so did I. So it's difficult. He was 2 pounds. I was actually like teaching, you know, in Baltimore and in DC at the same time, and he came really early, and it really just changed everything. So a lot of the work that you saw me creating was while I was pregnant, was while you know, after I had him, after I had really almost been let go from my job, practically like not hired for a full-time position because like I had to stay at home and to be with him. It was a struggle. And I thought, well, how am I really gonna balance this? So he was 2 pounds. This is 6 years ago, so really hard. This is him in the NICU. He was there for about 45 days. And this is him now. Okay, so I have completely let him carry me. He is why I am standing here. And he makes me a better person and a better educator and a better designer. So, fun fact, I'm so proud because this project here was actually highlighted and featured by AIGA a few years ago, maybe like 2 years ago. The reason why I respect the diversity and inclusion chapter and why I hope that they stay relevant and take over the world, especially with conferences like these, I'm good, thank you, is I have a really good friend, Carlos Estrada. You guys know him? That's my dog, that's my boy. So, we're BFFs. We have not met in person, but we have done an amazing collaboration. So whenever you see this face and all the stuff that he's been posting, it's about Knox, because he just loves him so much. And so it was really important. Now we're gonna talk about the definition of Blackness and how kids, like why I do what I do is to kind of continue to kind of preserve his future, because he is at risk. Not because he's autistic, but because he's Black and autistic. So let's get that straight right now. So he's really informed my work, and with the Black autistic students that I have in my classes, I'm able to wonderfully become an amazing resource because I know exactly what they're going through. And I'm gonna read this, all right? Because this is really important, I have not memorized it. So my definition of mothering as an act of resistance aims to empower and activate change because we need it, and it continues to be super relevant. So encouraging families and communities to engage in conversations about acceptance, you know? Because it's not just about awareness. Oh, I'm aware that you're Black, I'm aware that you're autistic. No, you need to accept me exactly the way that I am, and it starts from the minute that they're actually diagnosed. So this is him and me. This is actually was used as the cover of the zine that Diane was talking to you about, entitled KnoxRoxs. And these are his 2-year-old curls. When he was 2, he was diagnosed as autistic. So it's been amazing. And that really was just me at home for 2 years because I took a long break from teaching. Plus I didn't get the job. You know, I didn't get the full-time position that I applied for. I was basically kicked out. And I was replaced. And the person that they did replace, they fired her a year after she was hired. And then I reapplied for the position and got hired. You know, so it was just like, you guys, like, you know, I get it, but seriously, what happened? Like, what took so long? It was rough. So just so you know, that instantly, that the minute that your kid is diagnosed as autistic, it is viewed as a burden and it is viewed as a curse, and that your kid is not going to be normal ever. There are some people who are poisoning their kids today with toxic solutions to basically change their chemical issues and whatever is happening within their brain. So chlorine dioxide, they're literally like feeding these kids this insane concoction to basically cure them. And so when I was like, all right, so my kid is diagnosed, what's next? Obviously, like, there's treatment and there's therapies, and you're instantly taught that you need to fix this issue because your kid is broken. So where does that really leave moms? Where does that leave Black moms who don't have access to a lot of resources, or who are in denial because they don't want to be objectified and they don't want to be, you know, in oppression that they know is gonna be coming at them. So instantly they're like, well, in order for me to get the services that I need to be able to tell the world that my kid is broken and that he's not perfect. So if your response to an autistic child is to make them less autistic, or at least to appear to be less autistic, actually, I think that's a form of abuse itself. So this is not me. This is like an actual autistic, you know, Twitter account. Y'all, like, autistic Twitter is lit. Yeah. Like, I was just crying last week at how much they advocate for themselves, and it is so powerful. Like, listen to actual autistic people, okay? Period. That's all you need to do. And so, I don't know if you guys have seen some of these stories. So this slide, you may not really be able to see it that well, but so there are 2 stories here. One about an autistic white kid and one about an autistic Black kid. So just so that you see the juxtaposition of how Black neurodiverse kids are treated. So here, and again, I'm not making this stuff up. This isn't just me. This is like actually legit happening. So this is a 4-year-old kid who, you know, he was having a meltdown, and a cop, you know, was like, all right, you're gonna be all right? You're gonna be okay? You know, like on the subway, and it was, you know, just, it was really like highlighted and talked about, which is wonderful. And I'm glad that that kid was getting, you know, what he needed, and he was being treated with love and respect. But here we have on the next slide, an 11-year-old kid who was intentionally locked out of his school because he was viewed as a threat. So this isn't on the subway where you would expect something like that to happen. This is at his school, where he couldn't even get into the school because he was labeled as an emotional disturbance. So that means that this kid wasn't able to learn that day, and he was forced to go home. Well, since then, like, his parents have pulled him out of the school. It's horrible. So again, why I do is because of this representation. Like, these kids deserve, they just need to be seen, period. So I made KnoxRoxs. So where every family, their experience is different, but the commonality is that our children are not burdens, period. They're not. And it's not like Knox was like, I'm just going to be autistic. Yes, it is his identity and he's proud of who he is, but it's not like he asked to be this way. It's just his makeup. It's just who he is as a person. So they didn't ask for any of the burdens and the challenges that they're facing, and they depend on those who love them, his parents and his community, to equip him to be more successful and to reinforce that the fact that he's amazing, that he's incredibly special, and that he doesn't need to be fixed. And you're gonna hear me continue to say that he's not broken. So I'm so proud of these spreads. It's like the funnest thing that I've ever done. And it really just came from just me saying, I'm gonna stop kind of like pouring into so many things that just aren't really fulfilling me as a designer, as an artist, when I can't even like fulfill my son like how I would want to, artistically and creatively. So again, like this is really like a framework and a toolkit for kind of just redefining who I am as a mom, who I am as an artist. And it was just really important that we see a Black kid out in media, period. That kind of just destigmatizes what we normally think that we should see, or what's really forced on us. So this is another really cool spread that I'm really proud of. And again, it's just really just language that exemplifies what I want for him to see himself as and what I want other people to see him as. Black, brown, autistic, beautiful. He sings, he's colorful, he's just a blessing. Again, I like that I've been hearing a lot about some of you guys re-examining spaces and what they can mean for folks who have different abilities. Museums often shut kids who are autistic out, period. Folks who have different abilities, it's not a place for them. They're not inclusive and they're not accessible. And I want to be able to be in a space that just gives me so much soul and so much vision, like an actual museum space. And I'm not trying to isolate my kid, and I'm not trying to necessarily isolate myself either. So this is him at the BMA, one of his favorite museums, and they've been a big, huge supporter of Knox. They love him. So again, we are not defined by the things that we cannot do. So it's just really important for him at a young age, he's 6, to be able to understand, I'm not defined by other people's definitions or expectations of me, period. So it's at the Met. It's actually archived in their library. So it's amazing that the Metropolitan Museum of Art has been so open to featuring the book there at the Thomas Watson Library, which is a really cool space for educators and college students to be able to just get access to resources specifically created by artists that kind of highlight just issues that are different and that need to be shown. The National Museum of Women in the Arts, they've been a really big supporter. It's in the gift shop there. You can buy it. I was at DC Book Art Fair, and a lot of folks came through to be able to just enjoy the book. Really nice little feature in AfroPunk that was completely unexpected. So I'm happy that AfroPunk understands that Black stories need to continue to be told. And the National Women's March, I'm gonna get into that because they've been a really big supporter and advocate for artist moms. So this is Knox standing in front of the Met. And the Met actually has a whole social narrative independent family visit program that I think that more museums should really look to. And you're like, wow, a museum like the Met, they have a whole handout on children who have autism and families that embrace their autistic kids. There's a whole platform for that. I was blown away. So I was like, all right, well, the book is at the Met. I'm gonna bring my son, period, to see it. You can't. It's about him. He needs to be able to see it. So where is it? Because we want to sit in a room and I want for him to see himself. So it was a lot of fun. It was dope. They had fidget toys for him. They made it a really inclusive space so that he could just enjoy that whole entire experience. And this was a big, huge deal. It was a big, huge deal for a family to see themselves in an institution like that. It means a lot because it's just not. I don't know if I know any other. I don't know. Have you guys seen something like this before?
We've done projects.
Yeah, that's amazing. So again, visual cycle, breaking all the unjust stigmas, you know, within social and clinical practices. You know, kids obviously they have like these really interesting therapies that they have to go through that have to make them shift, like, you know, just their personalities and their behaviors so that they can assimilate to society. And so it was really amazing that with the Women's March, I was a part of a really amazing art build. So for those of you who were there, me and my team, we designed like this front of March banner. Trayvon Martin's mom is behind there. You know, they said, you know, oh, folks didn't show up. It was a really amazing crowd. The snow held out. It was dope. This is us like in the studio. The Women's March did a fun little documentary on all like the women. It just felt really amazing to be seen, to be heard, and to be in a space where art and mothering was celebrated, period. And so here's a huge banner. This is like in Hyattsville, like, you know, 10 minutes from where I grew up in PG County, and it was just so dope to be like an artist who was able to go back to like her hometown to make artwork about who she is as a woman now. Like, it was just so dope. So here you see we rise when disabled lives are elected, elevated, paid fairly, and we were allowed to come up with that language because it was coming from the source. So I was able to like really like infuse, you know, like language that was like honorable and that reflected like the actual like, you know, disability community. It was just really important that we highlighted their stories. So this is just this past January. So yes, I took Knox to the Women's March and he did an amazing job. This is him at the front of the march. So he was just super happy. We were allowed to create these really amazing hearts that amplified, you know, the different various agendas that meant a lot to like each of the women artists. So that is like a silhouette, that's his fist, that's my hand, that are infused in this huge like sculpture that defined like our heart of the matter. So I brought like my team to Bowie State to kind of chat with the students. So again, kind of like, you know, the intersection of curriculum, activism, so letting them know like your professor is woke, she's involved, and she wants you to be too, and you need to be able to so like Teresa was talking about, like merging like those two worlds together. They're related. Like the schools don't need to be participating in pretend marches, but actual real marches, and encouraged to be out. So again, like the next step is, you know, continuing to just create amazing artwork with Knox, giving him again like the fun agency to be able to again break the stigma, to kind of like play, to doodle, to kind of like encourage like that art form. So these are spreads for the next zine that celebrate mom and mothering and autism, and so it's been dope. So all of these spreads like him and I made together, so you'll see like all his doodles and funky stuff. So it's a joy. He's been in the studio, screen printing. We've talked a lot about collaborative as publishing art with like our publishers, Homey House Press. We've been on panels at different universities. He's front and center. He is not shy. He opened up like the panel that we had at Stevenson University in Maryland, which is a predominantly white institution. And so that's a little hard to read. So art built for public education. So I continue to be super, you know, active in the community, working with teachers, working with educators, making artwork for various marches, you know, Maryland funding. Like we struggle with like getting the stuff that we need, ACs, like legit like schools like in Baltimore, like they struggle each summer with ACs and like not having air. So this is just us like in the studio working within the community. So it's just important that like from jump, like he knows that he can continue to be a part of like this beautiful world and not be hidden. That is my joy. So zine workshops with other moms who feel, you know, kind of isolated, fun stuff at the Baltimore Museum of Art, workshops with other moms. Advocating for Black autistic voices, experience, and opinions and lives. I'm so sad because I like got a whole bunch of stickers printed and left them on in my office. So if you're interested in one, I'm giving them away for free. Just hit me up on the grams. So just continue to know that Black autistic lives matter in all different areas within education, within society. They're not going anywhere. And so that's it. Yeah.